Welcome to you all. Today's webinar is we've titled it "The One Big Thing," and the reason we've done that is at Archibus we've been working with clients for the last 7 years, and we've learned a lot. There is one thing that has been, we think, the secret sauce to most of the changes in the business that we've seen. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what that is yet. All right, the one thing workshop today, as I said, thank you to all of you coming along. Um, this is how we see architectural practices, and some of you may have seen this picture before. Sean, you've definitely seen it. Um, business is tough. No, it's not. It's not an easy way to make a living to start your own business. And there's a lot of hard work goes in, whether it's the guys at the front trying to keep this square wheel wagon moving, or the folk at the back, and all they can see is their hands on the back of a wagon. So it's pretty tough. But the key thing in this picture is the round wheels that are on the wagon. And that is the key message that we want to get through to you today, that there's no simple solution to running an architectural practice. Making it profitable, making it enjoyable, or more profitable and more enjoyable. But the answers are there. And we've picked up lots and lots of answers along the way in the last 7 years. We're going to share some of those today in terms of the frameworks that we've got. So the big question is, where do these ideas come from? Okay, so we assume that we've got lots of ideas, but how do we find them, and where do we look? So this is, I'm sure those of you who live in Australia will have come across this concept of the cool cabana. Okay, this is something that you go to a beach in Australia now, the beach is covered with cool cabanas. There are very, very few plain old-fashioned umbrellas on the beach. And what the cool cabana is effectively an umbrella with ribbons at each side. And if you notice pockets at the bottom here, which you fill with sand, it takes 5 minutes to set up. And it's very stable, because the one problem with umbrellas is that they blow away in the wind. So the question is, why did someone not come up with this idea a lot sooner? Well, what we say is you can't have the idea until you have the idea. So that the key to improving your business is to find those ideas and to implement them in your business in a way that makes a difference. And just another example, this is one of my favorites. So we've got two types of cases here. We've all seen these, wheels on your case and four wheels on your case. So the key question is, when were two wheels applied to a case? Okay, so they were started with pilots walking through airports with briefcases on wheels, and everybody said, I would want one of those. So the first wheels were put on cases in 1970. Okay? And we'd had cases and bags and things for many, many years, obviously prior to 1970. So you kind of have to ask the question, why did it take so long to come up with putting wheels on a wagon and having a handle that you pulled through the airport? Well, people just didn't have the idea, that was it. And then you look at the second case, which has got four wheels, and you think, well, once you've figured out you put two wheels on, surely it'd make a lot of sense to put an extra pair on, and then the case would stand up and you can move it along and you don't have to pull it every which way. It was 1987 before that was invented, 17 years from when two wheels were put on the case. So we really have got to be on the lookout for these ideas, because they don't just pop up. Okay, and ideas are, you can't have, what people say is you can't have the idea until you have the idea. So you need to be going through your business journey really expecting there to be new ideas. So you need a format within your business to highlight these ideas, get them implemented. And the way to change an architectural practice is a whole succession of these round wheels. So it's, if any of you have read Atomic Habits, James Clear speaks about the aggregation of incremental change. And just put another way, it's lots of small changes in an architectural practice will over time make a difference. So what we found from speaking to lots and lots of architects, that the one thing that they want is certainty. Okay, and those certainties fall into typically three categories. So you want certainty of workflow. You want good projects with good clients at the right time. If you can get a smooth flow of work, that makes life a lot easier in an architectural practice. Certainty of income. So architecture can be quite lumpy in terms of income. So anything that we can do to smooth that flow of work, flow of income, so that you've always got money to pay the bills. You don't want to be worried about next month's salary bill, or even the salary bill in 2 months' time. So certainty of income really important, and then certainty of impact. And what that's about is doing good work. What you don't want is a business or an architectural practice that compromises your design skills and what you want to achieve as an architect. So that's our three certainties. That's the outcome that we spend every day trying to help architects get those. But we really need to look at the source issues to find, we can't deliver these certainties overnight. We've got to start looking at systems and processes. So what are your systems and processes? Are you using sharp end processes, or are you still using something that you were taught years ago? Then you've got skills. There are lots of business skills that you need. And if you don't keep up to date with those skills, then you will find that you will fall behind. And the last one is mindset. And we find that mindset is really important in an architectural practice. There's a whole lot of narrative in architecture that kind of goes against running a good and successful business. No, architecture is hard. Architects don't make money. Nobody understands us. We find it hard to sell the value of architecture. We've got all of those things going against us to run a good architectural practice. And you really need to shift that. You need to start thinking, well, what if that's not true? And I can tell you it's not true. The people we deal with, and I'll tell you a little bit about our business in a second, but we've got experience of people running really successful businesses all over the world using the same methodology. Now, architecture as a product and a service is very complex. We know that. There's lots of hurdles, lots of problems that arise. But as a business model, it's actually quite simple. So you've got hours and you turn those into invoices. And the more efficiently you do that, your currency is hours, more efficiently you make that conversion, the better it's going to be. You don't have vehicles typically, you don't have a factory, you don't have equipment. So there's lots of things that make an architectural practice business model actually quite straightforward. Yes, you've got to hire people, but in extremis, you can get rid of some people, and sometimes you've got to plan properly so that eventuality doesn't happen too often. All right, so let me just tell you a little bit about Archibiz. We've been around for 7 years. We've worked with over 200 clients around the world. And typically we find people that are either starting off in practice and looking to get things right, or they've been in practice for some time and they're saying, we need help to get things working a little bit better. And just a couple of examples, there was two architecture architects, I won't tell you where, but they'd been in business probably 10, 12 years, working really hard. They'd worked on big projects for big firms. They'd got together. And yes, they'd got through their friends and families and their contacts, but then the phone stopped ringing and they were really struggling when we met them. And at one point I said to one of them, how would it actually feel if you had $200,000 in the bank? He said, well, Ray, I just can't even envisage what that would be like. And 2 years later, they had that $200,000 in the bank, just by putting in systems and processes that made the best of. There's plenty of work out there. Okay? You may find that things are a little bit tight, but architects typically are not going out of business, and architecture is still required. We had a young couple who came to us and they were working really hard, but 1 month they made a little profit, next month they made a little bit of a loss. And I can tell you now that they consistently make 30% net profit after the salaries. Now, that's not usual. What is usual is we target clients at 15 to 20% net. We say to them, that's where you should be targeting, because profit is not a nice to have. It pays for your investment. It pays for giving you a return as a shareholder. So profit is actually the lifeblood of the any business really, if you're not making a profit, then life is going to become difficult. You've got no money in the bank for a rainy day. Over the years, we've developed our offering. So we provide one-on-one business coaching for clients. We also have a free business school for architects on the school platform. We can get you a link to that. And we also have what we call the fast track MBA. And we've kind of stolen the MBA letters a little bit, but we mean it's the Master of Business for Architects. And that program has gone through a number of iterations. It's a live program, runs over 6 weeks. And if you're interested in that, we can certainly get you information on that. So that's Archibiz. None of us are architects. So we are exclusively focused on the business side of architecture, whether that be marketing, whether that be sales, whether that be finance. So the question then is, how do we apply that in the business? Well, we've established a model that says there are really 4 areas that you can work in on your practice. And the first one is the practice itself. So you need the practice to be profitable. You need the practice to have a vision and direction. You need a culture that holds together. Ideally, you need a purpose for the practice. But if the practice is making profit on a month-by-month basis, that is a really good place to start. Because then you can start going a little bit deeper and saying, okay, what do we need to do to improve the practice? Well, the first place to look, we think, is projects. How do you run the projects? How do you price the projects? How do you manage them once you've got them? How do you make sure that you're making the margin that you thought you would make when you put the fee in? And I know it's really difficult the market is tight. There's a lot of competition, but it's all the more reason for you to manage the projects. And as I said earlier, your currency is hours. And you really got to work hard to manage those hours, budget the hours, and make sure that the difference between the actual cost of doing the project and the fee that you get from the client, that gap is maintained. That's your margin. And we find that there's a lot of confusion around how that's calculated, and people use charge out rates, we think inappropriately in different places in the practice. So get the practice right, then look at the projects. Then you've got the people. So the people side of the business, you can be profitable, you can be running your projects well. You can still have people who are either not contributing, hiding a bit within the business, or needing more training or development. All opportunities for you to make the business more effective and more profitable in the end. And then we've got the space in the middle, which is perception. So we were looking for 4 Ps, and marketing didn't fit and sales didn't fit, but really perception at the highest level is what we're speaking about here. This is perception of your practice internally and externally. Who are you? How do you tell your story? How do you stand out from the crowd? All of those things are driven by the perception of your practice. And you can control that. But we do find that there's a lot of conversation in the market about marketing, and that the principle being, well, if you just get more work, everything will be fine. And I can tell you that's not always the case. More work is not always the solution to solving these problems that you get in an architectural practice. Not making profit, feeling overwhelmed, working too hard, too much stress and worry. To get rid of that, you need to take a holistic approach. You need to be looking at the practice, the projects, the people, and the perception. So let me just take you through and give you some ideas of where you can look within the practice and how we frame up the Master of Business for Architects, our MBA. In fact, before I do that, I will quickly show you a bit of magic. I watch Penn and Teller a lot on the television, so magic is pretty something to my wife's chagrin, I watch a bit of magic in the evening. So showing magic in terms of your practice is really about how we squeeze out the money out of the practice. So let's assume that you've got revenue of 500k, you've got expenses of 450, and you make a profit of 50. So that's not an atypical example of an architectural practice. making 10% profit. And you would say, well, that's pretty good. If I come along and I say, right, we can help you improve your profit by 50%. Okay. That sounds like a lot. Sounds like a big ask. So you're saying that we're going to take the profit from 10% to 15%, we take the revenue, the profit in dollar terms from 50K to 75K. That's the 50% increase. Now let's assume that we can keep the expenses the same. Okay, so those expenses relatively fixed in an architectural practice, salaries, rent, subscriptions, electricity, all of those type of things. So you typically know what the expenses are. We need to increase the revenue by 25K to get that 75K in the bottom line. That's a 5% increase at the top results in a 50% improvement in the bottom. That 25,000 up there can be made up of a whole lot of different things. It can be efficiencies, can be a little bit better pricing, better management of projects. If you can squeeze that lots of little things out of your practice, they will accumulate over time to give you really the profit that you're looking for. And that 15% we think should be an absolute minimum that you should be aiming for. 15 to 20% is a good, healthy business where you can leave some money in the practice and you can also take some money out as dividends. Really important that you look at profit as well as cash, and that's something that we would certainly help you with. Most practices that we meet are very focused on cash, not enough on profit, and profit over time will give you the outcome that you want. So, where I thought we were going 2 minutes ago, let me just tell you a little bit about the MBA, and it's all about being a more successful architect. That's what we want. We struggle to get what is the real outcome that people want, and it's not always about the money, and it's not always about the projects, but you do want to look in the mirror and see a successful architect. That whatever success means to you, and to be a successful architect, you probably need a successful practice round about you. So the Fast Track MBA, it's a 6-week program. It's a group live session. I run most of them. Tim on the call today helps us with those too. And we find it just really successful. It just makes a big difference to give people all of those ideas and round wheels that were on the wagon in the first picture. Because what you want in the end of the day is this consistent flow of projects and cash. That certainty that I spoke about earlier on. Because we know that there are problems in an architectural practice that we hear over and over again. A bit of feast and famine, either too much work, not enough work. Cash flow concerns. So the money's a bit lumpy and it's not coming in when we expected it. And that can cause real stress. And then project pressures. Those are the facts of running an architectural practice. And it's hard to get rid of all of them. But what you can do is put those systems and processes, skills and mindset changes into place to get you the outcome that you want, which is reliable project pipeline, profitable practice, and controlled ideal projects. So in our program, we tend to break the business down into what are the areas that we need to look at to help people get these outcomes that they want. And a lot of it's not rocket science, but if you haven't been taught, you're not going to just pick these things up along the way. And typically people work for other practices that in some cases aren't particularly well run. So you tend to role model things that aren't ideal anyway. And much better to start from scratch and say, have I got exactly what I need to run this successful practice? And we break this down into 9 modules. It's this: what's your standout story? How do you tell the story of your practice? How do you differentiate? Where are you positioned in the market? And getting that right will help you get the right clients. People will understand who you are and what the value is that you deliver. Then you need to find those clients. So you need an ideal client magnet. That presupposes you know who the ideal client is. And then you need to find a way to bring them into the practice when you need them. You want a regular flow. You don't want to be really busy and then have to start going looking for work. You need to have that consistent pipeline. And ideally, you want a waiting list. We've got lots of clients who, I've got one client who takes a deposit to get people on their waiting list because they've got plenty of work of the right type, and people are prepared to wait because they've got such a good reputation in the market. And then strategic selling skills. So people walk in the door. How good are you at converting those people into clients? Is that a skill that you've been taught? Do you know? And I often say that selling's a bit like being a stand-up comedian. You need to be practiced. You know where to have the pauses. You know where to get the laughs. You know the stories to tell. So that all of these are skills to be learned. And you may have been doing it for years, and you think, well, I'm pretty good at those. It's always worth checking. Are your skills fit for purpose? Then you need some vision. Frame your future. What are you trying to create here? And it fascinates us that most architectural practices are not really clear on what the practice looks like when it's finished. And if you compare that to doing a building and a construction, you wouldn't just start laying a few bricks and hope it works out. That could be very difficult to correct down the way. So getting the vision right and working towards that and knowing how to use a vision within the business, that's really important. And then budgeting for success. Now we're into a bit more of the financial piece, and what does the practice look like in financial terms, and how do we move towards that? How do we keep track of where we're at from a financial perspective? And then the last one, and this is very relevant to our one thing that we're going to be speaking about today, which is working on, not just in the business. Okay, and everybody speaks about that. It's a phrase that most of us know. You've got to work on the business, not just in the business. But very few people actually tell you what working on the business actually means. Okay, what does it mean to work on the business? What should I be speaking about? When should I speak about it? Who should I speak about these things? Who do I speak with about those things? So working on the business as a concept is really, really, really important. Strategic resourcing. So we often meet people who have this strategy of what we call get busy, get help. You get really busy and then you've got to go and look for people, and that is not strategic. It means you hire too quickly, you get the wrong people, you don't have time for training, and quite often that doesn't work out, and the business suffers, the new employee suffers, and the business is less efficient. Then we've got capacity optimizer. So once you've got the capacity, you need to know how to manage that. You need to know what your capacity is. And quite often we find practices are not really clear on what the capacity is of the practice. So get the capacity right. And then project planning. We call it project planning accelerator. All the projects that you're working on, how do they come together? How does that relate to your monthly invoicing, to your utilization of people, and how do you get closer to your capacity on a regular basis? If you've got the capability to do $50,000 a month, why are you consistently doing $35,000 a month? There will be reasons for that. And those reasons are the round wheels on the wagon. All right, so what is this one thing that we've been speaking about? And how do we use it within the practice? Well, it's really quite simple. It's a once a month meeting. Most companies, as you're aware, would have a board meeting. And we do call our meetings that we recommend a monthly board meeting. Some people get a little bit phased by that and they think that's pinstripe suits and oak panelled rooms and it's big fancy tables. It's not that. It's a time, this is when you work on the business, not just in the business. That's what this is about. It's about that one time in the month where you look at the business from a strategic perspective, not from a project or client perspective. This is you as the CEO of the business, imagining that you are coming to a board meeting. We'll just call it a board meeting, although we're toying the idea of saying it's about stopping and thinking. And if you had external board members, they wouldn't really be interested in the detail. They'd be interested in, is the thing moving in the right direction? Are these people delivering what they said they would deliver? Are there problems bubbling up that they are not addressing. So I'll give you a format as to how to do this meeting. So this is simply a board meeting agenda. Okay, so it's minutes of the previous meeting. So if you're meeting every month and you're keeping the minutes in a standard format, and these can be really short, a couple of pages typically at most, and all what they record are things that were noted. We agreed to do this, we agreed to do something else, and then actions that are planned. And when you've got the actions, you need the people who are going to be responsible for delivering those actions and the timeline for doing that by when. So this is the agenda. I'll take you through each of these in some detail because it's in here that the real meat of the business. This is a meeting that probably lasts an hour and a half a month. It's not a 3-hour meeting, a 4-hour meeting, but it's a meeting where all of the things within the business actually come together. So why do we take minutes of the last meeting? Well, this is absolutely key because this gives the continuity of the meetings. The format is the same. We're going through the actions that were planned last time. What did they take place? Did they not? And if it's a succession of meetings where individuals or the group as a whole are not doing the tasks that they said they would do, then you're not going to get the improvement that you want. Okay? And what we see over and over and over again is that 5 actions a month, however small, equate to 60 a year. That will transform your business. Okay. And you look back, and we often have a conversation with our coaches, and we say, what has actually changed in this business that's gone from struggle and strain to reasonable profit and some flow within the business? And it's just these small things, aggregation of incremental change, and recording that just is absolutely essential. Because if you don't have this meeting, then conversations about the business tend to take place in an ad hoc way. You have a glass of wine after work, or you have a breakfast meeting, or you speak about a project here, or a staff member there, and it's very disparate. Whereas if you bring it all together in this one meeting, you really do see the difference over time. And I sometimes say business is a bit like seeing a niece or a nephew. If you don't see them for 6 months, you see them and you think, my goodness, they've grown. And that's what it's like in a business. You look back and you say, well, what are the big things that's made the difference? This business is now profitable. Now we've got decent reporting. Now the projects are coming in that we wanted or want. And it's just a succession of those round wheels that have been put on the wagon over time. That's why you need the minutes. Then we've got a CEO update. And we call, say it's CEO because every business needs a leader. And whether you call that CEO or practice leader or principal, doesn't really matter. It's a leadership role. And typically we find that it's better to have one person to do this. Joint CEOs and group leadership really over time doesn't work. It's just a position. So we say you need the best cleaner in your business and you need the best CEO. Okay, so who's the best person to do the job? Because there will come a time at some point where you've got to make a choice between turning left or turning right, and somebody's got to make that call. So this CEO update is very short. It's just what has happened over the last month. We typically break it down into the highs and the lows. You know, what were the good things that have happened in the last month? What are the not so good things? And that exercise in itself, just collating all that, gives you a flavour for the business. Because quite often, business is based on feeling. I feel things are not going as well as they were. And you've got to understand that people that are working for you or with you, they want to know how the business is traveling too. So we encourage the leadership of the business to collate this information here. That information that's not confidential, obviously, and then have a meeting with the staff and say, we've just had a board meeting or we've had a stop and think meeting, and this has been the outcome. And here's how we're traveling. We've won these jobs. We've completed this project. We've got a new hire planned, whatever it may be. Because the one complaint we hear when we go into practices a lot is nobody tells us what's going on. Nobody tells us where we're going, and we're all a little bit in the dark. So this is your opportunity to pull all this together and to really show where the business is at. Second thing, third thing here is finance. Okay, so finance is really important in any business, and particularly in an architectural practice. Think of it like your scorecard. So business is a bit of a game, and if you don't keep the score, it can get pretty boring, and you can lose track of when you're winning, when you're losing. So that's why finance comes first, because all the other strategic choices that you make will feed through into the financial performance of the business. And so you've got performance of the business, performance against your budget, for instance. Then you may well have a set of KPIs, key performance indicators, and they would typically show trends. And then there's the whole concept of forecasting. So if you're looking at performance trends and forecasts, that gives you a pretty good handle on where you are as a business. We've developed all the templates that you need. There are effectively 3, maximum 4 pieces of paper that constitute the financial reporting in practices that we work with. And it just works. You get the information that you need. You get what we call actionable insight. So you need to look at the numbers and do something different or take some action, be aware of something that you weren't aware of before. And that then gives you the opportunity to improve the practice. So that's the financial piece. Too many practices that we meet leave too much to their accountant. Okay, they also manage a lot of their practices by cash. If we've got cash in the bank, everything's fine. Cash is really important, but it's consistent making a profit that will give you the cash at the end of the day. So you really need to be looking at 2 lenses at the business, the cash lens and the profit lens. And if you're using an accounting system like Xero or QuickBooks or MyOb, most of the reports that you need come out automatically. If you've got a bookkeeper or you're doing your own bookkeeping, the information is in there in your accounting system. Just a question of pulling it out and knowing where to look when you look at those financial reports. So we don't want to turn people into accountants, it's not necessary, but we meet an awful lot of practices that wait for their accountant to tell them at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, how much profit has been made. And really, financial reporting needs to be done on a monthly basis. And it needs to be organized in a way that doesn't take too much time from you or from your team, time that they should be putting into projects. Then we've got operations. So this is the meat of the operation that you've got. This is not the Monday meeting where you're going through all the problems and the projects and who's going to be doing what for the next week. This is high level. This is how is the business operating? Are we meeting our budget? Are we using the capacity that we've got properly? Is our utilization good? Okay, is the utilization where we said it would be? Okay, we said that the CEO is going to be 50% billable. Okay, is that showing up? Do you have a system that records the hours? So, as I said earlier, hours are your currency. Do you have a system that manages those hours as well as you manage the money? Because you need to manage both. So utilization, resource planning, hiring and firing, that all comes under operations here. And again, it's an opportunity to be strategic, not operational. Then we've got the big sales and marketing piece. So sales and marketing needs to fit into the overall picture of your business. It's not the be all and end all. It's absolutely important, but there are processes in here. There are ways of making sure that the people that come to the business are pre-qualified, that you don't have a lot of tire kickers. You want people who are fit for your business when they turn up at the door. Then you've got the briefing meeting and meeting the client. How do you do that? I mean, what's the most efficient way to do that? And it typically is not a story all about you and your history as a practice and what you're good at and all the work that you've done in the past and pictures of buildings. Those are important, but you really need to be thinking about, we actually have changed we've got 4 Ps here as well. Pre-qualify, and it used to be projects, and now we've changed that to problem. So the focus needs to be the second stage on the problem. What is the client's problem that you are going to be able to solve better than anybody else? That's your value. And people will, in any situation, will buy two things. They'll buy confidence and perceived value. And you've got to convince them that you're the best person to solve this problem for them at a reasonable price. And then you've got the proposal stage. Okay, so I won't ask the question, folks, here, but we quite often ask, what's your process? And well, we meet the client, then we spend a couple of days doing the proposal, and then we email it to the client. And that loses complete control of the sales process. The proposal needs to be presented, particularly if you're in a residential, doing residential work or commercial work with developers, where there are individuals involved. Obviously, if you're doing tender work, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but you still can build relationships, and you can still, someone at some point is going to make a decision on who gets the work, and you need to be well positioned to come out on the right side when there's a decision like that to be made. So there's things like what's your positioning in the market? How are you going to handle social media? Is your website fit for purpose? And we see so many websites that really don't answer the question, what problems do you solve for me as the potential client? And what makes you different? We see a lot of pictures of beautiful buildings, but lots of architects produce lots of pictures of beautiful buildings. And the real value sits behind that, the problems you can solve, the problems you can avoid early in the process. And there's a lot of opportunity, we believe, in educating the client. If you don't go into the detail of what the architect does in a context of solving their problems, then you're missing an opportunity. But because if you're just saying we can provide you a nice building and it could look like this, that is only, as you know, a very small part of the process. So in terms of getting the work that you need, you've got to be able to tell your story particularly well. And we've got lots of techniques that we teach people in how to do that, and really effectively selling skills. So at a basic level, the three things you need to do in your business is attract clients, convert the clients into, attract prospects, convert them into clients, and then deliver at the end of the day. If you can do those three things well and monitor them through your board meeting, you will do really well as a business. And then we've got projects. Now we call it projects, but this has nothing to do with the client projects. These are projects that are ongoing in the business that are business improvement projects. So typically these could be moving office, installing new software, even building a new website. So it may be a team of people that are working on this. It's time limited. It's got a particular outcome that you're looking for. But if you don't have a board meeting and you don't have a stop and think time, when do these projects get spoken about? They get spoken about often in isolation. And we must set up a meeting and we must speak about this project and how's it progressing. The role of the board meeting is to monitor these projects. Are they on track? Are they on budget? Are we going to get the outcome that we want to get from this project that we're spending time and money on? Then we've got any other business. There shouldn't be very much in this section here, but it is an opportunity for people to say, is there anything else going on in the business that hasn't been covered in finance, operations, sales and marketing? Any other business? And you want to avoid a situation where people throw a hand grenade in here and say, oh, I've got this thing, I'm just not happy about this or that. That's when meetings can drag out and get out of hand, if you like. So any other businesses there's a catch-all, but it's not a time for big proposals or big criticisms or complaints. And then the last bit is the date and time of the next meeting. And this is absolutely crucial too, because if you don't set this up, what we recommend is that it's the same people, same place, same time each month. You don't have to figure out when you can get the people together and are you available next Wednesday, and sorry, I've got a dental appointment on Tuesday. If you get it in the diary, you have it the same every month. And if you're working on your own, I should have maybe said this earlier. It can be just you. You know, this doesn't have to be lots of people in the room. We get the question a lot, who should be on the board? Well, the board needs to be appropriate for the size of the business and the stage of development of the business. If you're just starting out, then this is maybe a bit of time just to sit and reflect on your own and to go through but I would encourage you to see the rigor and the benefit of running a meeting like this once a month. Because this is the working on the business, not just in the business. So same time, same place every month, and that'll hopefully give you the improvement that you want. So that's the one big thing. That's the thing that we've seen make the difference. The question then is, what do you do with all of this? Okay. So you've really got two options. Uh, First option is that you have a go on your own and you work out how to do this, and you put a plan in place, and you're looking for those round wheels off the wagon on your own, or you get some help. Um, and there are lots of people out there to give you help. There are people helping with marketing and finance. There are not many people who are doing what we would call a holistic approach to business. There are not people who are doing pure focus on architectural practice. And that's why we've developed both our coaching service, one-on-one to or one-to-one client, and the fast track MBA, which is the group going a little bit deeper and fast tracking those skills into your business. And then we've got the business school where you can join. It's free. There's lots of discussion in there. There's lots of free resource. But I would seriously ask you to consider the fast track MBA. We only take 10 people per month, and the next cohort starts at the end of February. I think it's the 24th. So please have a look at that. We'll get you the link to have a look. And there's also a link. Tim, could you maybe put the link to the setting up a meeting, the bit.ly link, I think was there somewhere. You could put that in the chat. I'm always open to speak to architectural practices and business owners. I love speaking to architects who are running their own business. Tim's on the call. He's one of our coaches. He also can help and chat to you about where you're at and what your aspirations are. There's no obligations in these calls. It's purely a chat about where you're at, where you want to go, and what your current challenges are. And that kind of brings us to the end of the formal part of the presentation. Hope you found that useful. And yeah, we'd love to chat to you. And if there are any questions at the minute, I'm happy to take questions. I've got somebody in the chat. 2 new messages. That's the book a call is there. So all good. Any other questions? Tim, did you get any questions coming in while we were going through?
No questions in the chat. You answered one of my questions around who do you have the meeting with. I thought that was good. I do have a question about the board meeting though, or the stop meeting. How do you know that you're talking about the right things, or how do you know what you should really be talking about in the meeting?
Oh, that's a great question, and there's no easy answer to that because there will be things that are working, things that are not working, and again, that quite often comes back to the financial performance of the business, the KPIs. So what's getting better, what's getting worse? There are measures that we recommend for architectural practices. An example being what we call the 6-month rolling average of work secured. So how are you picking up work? It can be quite lumpy in an architectural practice. You pick up a big job and then nothing for a couple of months, but you need to be able to keep track of that and start focusing on the future, not the past, if you like. And that shift from historical, where accountants typically live, to forward thinking, which is where business people should live, that makes a big difference. So not sure if that fully answers your question, Tim.
It's a tricky one. Does
Yes.
anyone else have any questions? You know what? You can just unmute yourself if you like and shoot a question through to Ray.
Yeah.
There
No
is
problem.
one in the chat, Ray, from Imogen. Would the
Yeah.
fast track MBA be worthwhile for a sole practitioner?
Oh, absolutely. I think we actually have had people on our program who haven't even started their business yet, and they find that they've been working for a big firm, but they haven't learned an awful lot about running a business. And those are the people that we consider to be the most enlightened, if you like, because the analogy we use is driving a car. You wouldn't jump in a car without driving lessons, and yet people start businesses every day without the necessary skill. Well, we'd consider the necessary skills to run a business. And trying to retrofit the skills becomes progressively more difficult. If you've got 10 or 12 people and your systems are not fit for purpose, that can be, yeah, it's more difficult. But so absolutely, if you're a sole practitioner or starting to think out, yeah, we often say if you're a sister or a brother or a child who was thinking about architecture and going in the road. The thing about architecture is most architects aspire to have their own business more than most other industries because they've been taught how to design. And when they go and work for a big firm, they typically don't get the opportunity to do that as much as they would like. So architectural schools don't teach business, and there's lots of complaining on LinkedIn and places like that about that. I think that's the wrong way of thinking. Okay, because most professions don't teach the professionals how to run a business when they're learning to be a professional. You get the technical skills right, and then the business skills come subsequently. So that I yeah absolutely would encourage you to consider that seriously because it's a bit of an investment now. It's not huge, $3,000 Australian, but that can serve you well for this year, next year, the year after, because business is it's business is pretty simple once you get the rules. But if nobody teaches you the rules, it can be a bit of a mystery. And if you wait to figure it out yourself, I know we've got Kate on the call here who's done the program before. I mean, what would you say? What would your advice be to a startup in relation to getting business skills? Because I think that was you.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that I thought the program was really, really good. But I think one thing I've really loved is that we still have access to to all of the content. So when I did it last year, I was really busy at the time. So I was taking it all in, but I wasn't really able to implement it as much as I want. But over the summer, it's been something I've been like consistently working on and referring back to. And then, coming and having these sort of touch points to make me think about it. But it wasn't like you did it and then you just sort of left. I still have a lot of material that I can refer to, which I think is really important.
Yep. So we house all our every course has its own classroom on the school platform, and we record all of the sessions. So the sessions go into the classroom. The templates. So the course comes with a whole lot of templates around finance, operations, sales, and marketing. Rather than inventing them yourself, you get the templates that we've evolved over the last 7 years. And as Kate says, that classroom is you have lifetime access to the classroom and it gives you a chance to dip in when something comes up in finance or operations or whatever it might be. There will be a piece in the program that covers that. And you can go in and sort that at your leisure. Sean, you've also done the program. Good to see you on the call. What would your advice be?
No, I second exactly everything Kate said. So when I did this late last year, I was again pretty flat out, but I used some time over summer to implement some things. So I've actually got my first ever board meeting by myself tomorrow. So I'm not a sole practitioner. Imogen, I've got someone working for me, but essentially me is running the business. So I've got my first little board meeting by myself tomorrow morning where I'm basically just going to go through and dedicate some time to work on the actual business side.
Yeah, and sometimes that just that you get that tone and that conversation there about business being a bit of, it's not really architecture and should it really be doing that? And but I think if you want to have a life that's reasonably stable and you feel in control, then you need these skills. You need to know where to look when things are not just going as smoothly as you would like. And speaking to other architects is fine, but there's a real shortage of business education around the architectural profession. We're trying to fill some of that gap, but it hasn't been easy. And in the 7 years, people are very quick to complain and they don't get the support, but we're here to provide the support, and we'd love to chat to people about what we can do differently, what we can do better, and how we support you guys better. Imogen, does that help? Where are you?
Fantastic. Yep, I'm
Uh,
sold.
You're sold.
Yep, I'll be in the next one.
Where are you speaking from?
I'm in Brunswick in Melbourne.
Oh, you're in Melbourne too.
Yes. Yeah.
Attracted. I'm in Thornbury, so not that far away.
Yeah.
All good. Small world. Any other questions? Alex, did you have anything you want clarification on?
Not really, just a lot of resonance. Basically, stop hiding. It's a business of architecture. I'm your archetypal. I worked in corporate architecture for 25 plus years, and 3 years ago I said it's now or never. And it's been hard. I'm really busy, but I'm not making any money, or not making enough money. Like you said, profit is not an option.
Yeah,
It's necessary.
that's good. Yes, the fact that you're here listening to that it actually sets you apart. And it's what we say is it's good business that allows you to do good architecture, not the other way around. This let the work do the talking and do good architecture and win some awards and life will be fine. It really is a bad message to get across to people. And it'd be much better if architectural schools, they don't have to teach business, but they should put a cautionary word out there that says, if you're thinking of starting your own business, then here's a directory of people that can help you. It's a very small ecosystem, I can tell you, around the world of people who help architects on the business side. I could name them in 10 fingers, and we work with a lot of them because they tend to have specialities around copywriting, websites, finance, fee proposal writing. Our friend Ian Motley does that. So if you do the program and you find that there's certain things that you need to go further or deeper with, then we can point in the right direction. We can get you the people who are credible and that you can use with confidence. Because as I say, there are not that many. There are a lot of architects helping other architects, or they've been in practice for a long time. But yeah, good luck to them too. I hope they do a good job. But we see it as an advantage to us not being architects because we just don't get involved in anything related to the product and service. And that means we've got a level of objectivity and clarity that I think some other people maybe lack. But I've never been in the business of criticising the competition. There's room for everybody. We just need to get architects being more valued because building is happening. I wrote about that. There's an article the other day on LinkedIn said architecture is dying. It's a complete rubbish. The business model, the traditional business model of architecture may be dying, but I think that's buildings are still being built. Buildings still need to be designed, and I think it's all in the mindset of architects. If that shifts, then you'll get a better outcome, and you'll stand out from the crowd. Any other final thoughts? All good. And anybody watching this on replay, we're here to help, and we can get you any information that you need. And everybody that's registered for the call will get all the links to get the replay and the resources.